welcome once again to one and all here. I just heard a few pre-work for the session today done by Neeta, Anuradha, and Mansi also had her input. So what Neeta said was absolutely right, as Wordsworth also says that getting, words to convert into poetry is not, like thinking, browsing, and then getting on. Poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions. So, the words to write poetry should come as like leaves on a tree. They have to be like a quick one. It cannot be like wait, watch, and then a word strikes. So I agree with what Neeta said and what problems, generally children face in converting a piece of prose into poetry. Also, what Anuradha said that it is difficult to convert a piece of prose into poetry as against converting a piece of poetry into prose. It's very obvious and natural. So when as teachers, we have, slight, difficulty in converting prose into poetry. We can very well imagine the difficulty level of the children who are studying in classes 5th, 6th up till 8, 9, and so on and so forth. And also what Mansi said that yes, she is now imagining the level of difficulty which her children would have faced when she was teaching them poetry and asking them to write a few poetic lines of conversion or and go ahead. So here I had asked for converting a small piece of prose into poetry, and I had given you a pre-work on the poem by William Blake about tigers. So I would like to know, you can write on the chat box or just unmute and say, did you really enjoy this task? Had you done this task ever before? Yes, Anuradha?
So I absolutely enjoyed this task because it's not something that I've done before. So from what I understand, this is called literary alchemy.
Yes.
And that's not something that I've engaged with before. So it was very nice. It was
nice. Great. I'm glad to hear that you liked it and it was interesting. Anyone else who found it, doing it for the first time?
It was my first time also. So poetry to prose, it was kind of okay. It was, we can do it. But yeah, prose to poetry is kind of difficult to just assemble words and making it in a poem. So that is kind of difficult. So.
Okay. Yes, Rigson, I can see wants to say something.
Yeah, for me, I don't know, it was definitely very different because I haven't done something of that sort before. And surprisingly for me, turning a poem into a prose was a little difficult, in contrast to having a prose and turning it into a poem. Maybe because I personally really like or enjoy reading poems and writing those haiku and all of that. So for me, that was different, and that was easier in that sense.
Okay, I'm very glad to hear this perception that she found it the other way easier as compared to the 2-3 inputs that I had at the beginning. So that's great. I mean, it is wonderful. So what is it, Rigson, that made you convert prose into poetry? How did you find it converting that as an easier task?
Okay, for me, I really go with a very short poems to begin with. I don't really think a lot about the entire theme. Or maybe, I just get the crux of what the poem is all about. And then I basically go with a very abstract poems mostly, which is definitely very difficult for the students when it comes to your classroom and when you start teaching the students, but it gets difficult. But for personally, I mean, I sort of go with a very abstract poems, and I just play around with the theme, so that makes it easier. So for example, if it's a seasonal poem, I wouldn't just go with the details, but I would just play with the theme, the season, so that's how I sort of just take out the essence of the prose and then just convert it into a poem.
Correct. Yes, Rigzan, I think you deserve an applause for this, because that is actually the quintessence. If you go into a lot of details of the, while you are converting a piece of prose into poetry, then it will be really tough. It will become slightly, difficult and complicated. You got to concentrate on the very basic outline theme and then just get into conversion. Then it becomes easier, and probably after 2-3 turns, you'll find it like much more easy, and then further practice will make it far more easier. So that would be, one way of engaging your students, by telling them that they set their eyes on the basic theme which runs throughout the piece of prose. All right. So I would like to share a quick oral, presentation of one of my students who had converted this tiger into a piece of prose. And you just see how beautifully, you have to forget the poetry part at the moment when I'm reading it. Am I audible, Mansi, and the participants?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So have you ever wondered at the beauty of a tiger? Let us admire. The tiger is the supreme creature of the jungle, and the color he possesses makes him bright, that even at night in the forest it roams fearlessly. Sometimes I wonder and marvel at the creator who framed his ferocious body in such great symmetry. The mystery is that wherein, which far off skies were the fiery eyes of the tiger made? The creator who has used such fire, that power, he himself must be so wondrous. He must be possessing great imaginative power. And I'm also wondering at what kind of wings he must be possessing. So this was a small, conversion, which out of all the conversions that I had received in my class, I liked the best, because he quickly, understood what exactly is there in these two stanzas, and then made a quick conversion, and sounds quite appropriate and quite good. All right. So the pre-work has been discussed, and today we are going to speak something on, we are going to hear and learn something on infusing enthusiasm in teaching and creating music of poetry and prose. We are all very well aware that the most important characteristic required by a teacher is, in her classroom, is what? Can anyone in one word answer me? Yes? Yes, like I would say the ripple effect. There are loads of teachers, there are loads of children, and the teacher who teaches with a ripple effect leaves an impact on the children. So we shall talk about it in today's session. Albert Einstein says that it's the supreme art of the teacher to awaken joy in creative expression and knowledge. Basically, as I was also discussing in my previous session, that more than the content, how it has been transacted, that really matters. So if we talk of the quality to awaken joy in the classroom, to bring a sort of learning environment in a classroom, is all what enthusiasm is. Now, as a teacher, if you ask yourself, if you were a student, put yourself into the shoes of a teacher, of a learner. If you were a 6th grade learner, how would you like to learn? Say, for example, when you are teaching and when the children are learning Shakespeare, I'm mentioning Shakespeare because all the teachers have a idea of who Shakespeare was and what were his works and how lofty his works were. So what possible, there's a question here, what possible prior knowledge and curiosity will add spice to the learning? There are 4 options here: family details, features of Elizabethan age, social structure during the Shakespearean times or the Elizabethan age, and many more. So according to you, what would, what kind of prior knowledge will add spice to your lesson in the classroom? So obviously some would tick on family details, some would tick on the features, the societal structure, or some many more. But what I feel is all these are really very important to create that ripple effect in your classroom, to infuse enthusiasm in the classroom. We got to know pre and post. By that I mean we got to know a lot of details of the writer, of the author, of the poet. We got to know what was the social pattern structure existing. We got to also know that what were the factors that brought in lot of writing, brought in lot of creations, and this will really help to make the children understand with lot of enthusiasm, with extra inputs. If you have, you are able to focus and you are able to grasp the attention of the children for a longer period of time. So if I think of the social structure during Elizabethan age, we know that it was the age of Renaissance. There was a lot of curiosity. There was a lot of, printing press. There was a lot of Reformation, introduction of the printing press, and there was the whole of Europe was brimming up with new curiosities. So that really affected the writings of Shakespeare, and the emotional waves that were in those times found their expression in the writings of Shakespeare. There are a host of writers of those times, but if you try to think on Shakespeare as a writer particularly, you will see all possible human emotions, all possible curiosities, all possible content existing in the society has been taken into good consideration, and that will help your teaching become enthused in the classroom if we go into the family details or the features or social structure, etc., of a particular writer, poet, etc. So the other example I'm giving of the in the same concern is of Mr. Brown. He wanted to teach Shakespeare in his class. He wanted them to know how a piece of literature might influence or be influenced by the events of that day. So when his class read Shakespeare, they learned about Elizabethan age. They also learned about how literature, music, art, dance, they were all influenced by the reigning queen at that time. And that further led to the development of England as a powerful European nation. Because in those days, the power of France and Spain was over UK, and therefore UK was not able to come up. But suddenly with Renaissance creeping in, with Renaissance features, it was there was a sudden change, and therefore the writers and the poets had a great hand in shaping the the content of those times. Now the question arises is how to infuse or harness enthusiasm in a classroom. All of us as teachers know that we have to be enthusiastic. We have to be, lively. We have to be, creating some effect, some impact in the classroom. We want our children to gain majorly, at least out of a period of 40 minutes, the focus span could be say 30-35 minutes, and we want that in those 30-35 minutes the children gain maximum. But how can that be made possible? So here we have a list of a few ways in which you can harness enthusiasm in a classroom. There is no, a yardstick to measure, but yes, we can possibly assume that if you follow your bliss, bliss means what? By bliss here, I mean your energy. By bliss here, I mean the most desirable quality in a teacher. So if you follow your bliss, that will create a very large impact. And this happens at the entry point when you are entering your class, when you are just, at the threshold of your classroom, your bliss suddenly, gets charged. So you have to follow your bliss. That will set the tone of the classroom. Think of what you want to attain, which means a lot of homework, which means that you know that what is the learning objective of today's teaching, what do you want your children to gain, and what are the possible assistant aids that you have used in order to make that particular attainment successful. Obviously, you have to have a plan. Without a plan, it is absolutely impossible to have that enthusiasm in the classroom. You should introduce mind maps, which is a magical way to infuse enthusiasm. I'm sure you must have been using mind maps, and if those who have not used, mind maps is a very simple strategy. Say, for example, it depends on the level of which class you are taking. It can be used in all the classes, right from first up till 10th, 12th, and even at college level. So, say for example, if you have a word in mind, say aerodrome or airport, you can just on the blackboard write airport and draw a cloud over it, branching it into say 10 parts and asking your children to have a mind map of an airport. They close their eyes for a minute and then they will come out with words. Say, for example, they'll say pilot, they may say, stewardess, they may say the flight of stairs, the cockpit, the words which come to the minds of the children after you have given them the main word. That would help to create a wonderful mind map. So depending on your lesson, depending on the work that you have to do in the classroom, you can pick up some choice, difficult or important terms from the chapter and put them on mind maps just to ignite the spark, just to set the ball rolling in the class. Mind maps are very, very helpful. Next is that you should never be in the victim mode. Get out of the victim mode. Nothing will mull your enthusiasm faster than seeing yourself as a victim. By this, I mean that never have a negative emotion about yourself. No matter you have taken, say, 3 classes, 4 classes, by the time you come to your 5th or the 6th period, there is a normal tendency that the enthusiasm dips down. But let that not overpower you. You can, in a minute, in a jiffy, get yourself back to the same by feeling good about yourself, by feeling confident, by following your bliss. So this depends from teacher to teacher. This depends from subject to subject. This also depends, largely on the number of your children in the classroom, whether it is a practical or whether it is a theory, whatever. So that is basically dependent on the teacher's bliss. Then float questions to warm up. That's also very essential. It's not that on the very first day when you have to begin your chapter, you simply open your text and get on to reading, which becomes very mundane in the course of time. So you got to do a warm-up exercise, you got to float questions, maybe just 2 questions on the title of the chapter, but that is also sufficient. It is just to, attract and, make the children aware that there is something which is not in their book. There's something which is other than the text. Turn things or dreams into reality. Sometimes Your children need to be asked, they need to be given a break while the lesson is going on. Suddenly, out of the blue, you need to raise a question which has nothing to do with your text. You got to, turn things absolutely upside down. Supposing you are discussing about, say, if it's a mathematics class, I'm giving example of maths. If you're doing fractions, there should be something which is absolutely different, and you are talking of, say, art or music, and vice versa. So that, helps to get back to the original mode of enthusiasm. Stimulate yourself. That is for you as teachers. Go to a museum, hear good music, see nature, admire nature, dress up well. That's also a very integral part of a teacher's bliss. It is undoubtedly a well-known fact that once you are dressed up smartly, the enthusiasm along with confidence automatically reigns supreme. And dance as you have no other day. So these are a few. Getting on to it, you have to put in hours is not enough. Putting in hours, giving a lot of time to one chapter is not enough. Maybe sometimes it's not required as well. What you require is yourself into those hours. Did you get my message? I'm not interested in giving, as a teacher, say, about a week for one chapter. What I'm interested in, putting myself more into the content, into the process, rather than putting week into that particular teaching. So this is very important. Putting in hours is less impactful than putting yourself into those hours. And you see the magic. It's like making things easier for the teacher primarily, and of course for the children. Challenge yourself. Yes, it is a teacher's task to take up challenges, and the more you challenge yourself in the classroom, the better it is. The children learn more from the teachers' challenges. Be physically strong, of course. Good sleep, lower your stress levels. Easier to say, but you can practice it. With all of you know how you can lower your stress levels. I won't explain on that. Declutter your mind and space. That is also very, very essential. When you are going to class 6 or class 7, nothing else except that particular piece that you are going to take should be on your track. You have to declutter. Don't let your mind be clouded with what you are going to do in the interval time, or what you are going to do in the last period when it is a off period for you, or how much of your correction is left. That should not bother you. So enthusiasm will automatically come if you are focusing at a particular topic, at a particular point of time, at a particular class with a particular strategy. So that initiates, a lot of, thinking, that initiates a lot of, categorization, but it helps. Use your strength. What are your strengths? I'm sure all of you have strengths, and you must be using them off and on in your classroom. So example, if you're a lawyer and you are good at singing, so what should be the strategy to infuse enthusiasm in your law class? Then you can turn law lectures into songs. So the point is, the idea is that there are various methods. You got to just, allow yourself to be flexible. Do not be just sticking on to a stereotype, as we discussed in the session day before. So you can make your teaching very interesting and very, very enthusiastic. Now, why? The question is how and why. Why do you need this kind of enthusiasm to be infused? There are definitely results. It results in better students' performance. It keeps out the rote learning part, and children, what they observe, what they hear, register better than what they, do it like what they, learn by heart or rote learning. Better class environment. It makes your class lively. It makes your class, sparkling. It makes your class, you have a sort of jump start. You have a sort of, buoyance in the class. There is some weight in the class. There is some buoyant activity happening in the class. So the class environment is very essential to be, conducive to the learning of whatever you are teaching. Better concentration levels, of course. The concentration levels, as I already mentioned, as the researchers say, the psychologists say, in a class of 40 minutes, 30 minutes, it's good concentration, and then it starts dipping. So in those 30 minutes also, in order to make your teaching very productive, you can get on to the modes in which you can infuse enthusiasm. That will help in better concentration levels. That will also help in maximum participation, because you have to have a parity. There should not be, even the underperformed students, the average students, the above average students, there should not be any demarcation from the teacher's side. We know their capabilities, but we have to know that if there is a kind of, sort of ignorance made in the classroom for below average or underperforming students, then it does affect the atmosphere in the classroom. So if you want maximum participation, you have to have good strategies. Teachers' enthusiasm raises the level of learning. Yes, of course. Below average students become enthusiastic learners. Entrust them with some tasks of their capability, which is, of course, related to, which is in tandem with the topic you are taking in the classroom. So in order to make your classroom good, in order to make your classroom more receptive, we need to have enthusiasm, some activities related to increase enthusiasm, as we've already discussed, and that will help you have a wonderful, wonderful class in terms of teaching and in terms of learning. Now, the other part of today's webinar focuses on music of poetry and prose. You have already done some pre-work, so you probably have a good idea as to what am I hinting at. There are various, students who keep saying that they are not interested in learning or taking up prose lessons. Some of them say they are not interested in poetry because poetry has the number of children, the number of interpretations, etc., etc. So there is no one universal interpretation of the whole poetry. So there have been cases where we find difficulty in, keeping up to the expectation of the teacher for the students. So here I have a small, way of making things easier in terms of infusing music into poetry as well as prose. So I'm sure all the English teachers are teaching poetry and prose, or I do not know if you have a separate, faculty for prose and for poetry, but whatever. Poetry activities, which as far as my experience has been, tells me really makes an engaging class. So we had tried poetry picnics, which made the children so much anxious, so very, eager to learn only poetry section they wanted to be done in a particular span of time. They said, ma'am, we can do the prose later, we can do only the poetry portion in the first 2-3 months, which of course is not a very good way. We have to mingle and we have to, bifurcate as to, it depends on teacher to teacher and school to school, class to class. So by poetry picnics, if you try to organize once in a while, of course, all these things cannot be done all the time in the classroom. But yes, of course, once in a while, in order to, make a class, enjoyable, you can organize a poetry picnic. I'm sure you must be taking your children for museum visits and for picnics, or for say, what do you call, zoo visits and all. but you must never have taken them for a poetry picnic. So take your children for poetry picnic. You can carry, some brown paper bag sandwiches, and you can tell the children that it's purely a poetry picnic, by which you mean to say that you will be reciting poetry, we'll be learning poetry, we'll be doing poetry, we'll be dancing poetry, and so on and so forth. So what does it actually mean? So supposing you are going to a dam, or you are going to a forest, or you are going to the lakeside, you can ask your children to create poems on lake, L-A-K-E, or if you are going to a mountain trek, you can ask your children, that is pre-work, you can ask your children to create one or two small stanzas on trekking or on mountaineering or whatever the theme of your picnic could be. So this will help them, encourage to be good in the classroom, and you can create good music in the poetry class. Second is the prior knowledge. So supposing whatever your topic is, as I already discussed, prior knowledge, both with the teacher and the children. That is very essential. That gives them a base, that gives them a background, and then they perform better, they learn better. You can establish theme, you can have like nature poems, you can have war poems, you can have poems lamentation, the sorry poems, the grief poems, the childhood poems, poems related to pets. There can be a load of, list, there can be loads and loads, a plethora of themes on which you can ask your children to create poetry. You can have a poetry activity kit catering to sights and sounds. I give the same example. Supposing you are on the lakeside, you can ask the children to notice the sound of a waterfall. You can ask the children to hear the chirping of the birds and then create poetry out of it, be in the laps of nature. So sights and sounds go with music in poetry. You can also create poem for other subjects. I mean, it can be a poem on a watch, on phone with the children of 21st century. It can be a poem on laptop. It can be a poem on, anything under the sun. Now here is an example for mathematics. I mean, it may be sounding quite, weird, that how can mathematics be taught through poem? You are teaching, the teachers in mathematics, they are teaching shapes. Why I'm taking it in my English, I'll tell you later. So the example here that I've penned is, gold is the dome of the mosque, big and grand, beside it two towering minarets stand. Your shapes, the concept of shapes become clearer through music, through poetry. So the dome word refers to circular shape, and minarets, cylindrical. Then the children are also learning some nouns in this. The children are also learning, some words which are rhyming. So, I mean, you can juxtapose English, mathematics, like interdisciplinary, but I'm talking this. Why? Because the same happens in English. This is for mathematics. You can use it for any subject, for any, it could be even, Sanskrit, all languages, for any piece of subject. Set a scene, desert, salt lakes, glaciers, they can be the themes, they can be the scene, they can be the background to create poetry. And change the stereotypes. As I mentioned even in my previous session, stereotypes needs to be changed off and on, frequently, flexible. You got to be flexible. All of you have heard this very famous nursery rhyme. Since ages, we have been hearing it. And what is the tune? Everybody knows. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses, all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. You must have learned it the same way. Your mother must have learned it the same way. Your children will learn it the same way, and generations on will learn it the same way. Have you ever thought of it? Has anybody ever thought of resetting the poem, Humpty Dumpty? Wouldn't it be interesting if you allot this task to your children? This would sound really interesting. How? See it here. Humpty Dumpty swam in the sea. Humpty Dumpty's sunscreen was SPF 3. Because he was so lightly oiled, dear Humpty Dumpty ended up hard boiled. How does it sound? See the previous, the stereotype, and see this. Does it sound interesting? Does it involve enthusiasm? Does it? Yes, I'm sure. It creates some novelty. It opens up your thought process that yes, even this could be done. Yes, why couldn't or why has it not been done for so many years? So that, brings sort of life in your classroom. Your children get motivated, your children get envisioned, and the same practice, the same exercise can be done with many more nursery rhymes, many more stereotypes, and that will create good, music and poetry. Then you can also incorporate music. By music here, I mean the singing ability into every poetry unit or a prose unit, because it makes the genre more interesting to reluctant students. As I told you, a classroom has children who are, underperformed, who are below average, above average, mediocre. So we got to also think of the reluctant students. They are disinterested in the classroom due to various reasons we needn't discuss. So in order to make your transaction reach that group of students, we should, we can, we must incorporate some music into poetry and prose. This is also a very effective strategy, making a poetry collage. How can you make it? Say you have 3-4 poems in your course, put all the poems together, ask your children, to pick up 6 striking lines, or the lines which, they feel that they are very catchy, they are important for them, or the images, then 6 lines from each poem. So if there are 4 poems, so they have 24 lines. Then they can mix, they can amalgamate those lines with each other, and they can create a wonderful 5th poem, a new poem, by, adding, deleting, putting in their own ideas, taking up the lines, taking up the images. So adding some linking words, and the final poem created will be something very different. So by infusing music into prose poetry, all that will make your children engaged. They will be, activated. Their minds, their, souls also. They will do it passionately. They will do it as an interesting task, not as a compulsion. So I would like that all the teachers, once in a while, twice, as far as possible. I mean, although I know that it is not possible for all the teachers and all the subjects and all the classes, but whatever maximum we can, we should. The similar tone comes in prose. Why do you need music in prose? Prose as it is, as I said, and most of the children feel, when the chapter is very lengthy, it becomes, sort of, monotonous to continue in the same tone. The articulation doesn't change much. The cadence of your voice doesn't change much in prose as in poetry. So we need to, make some musical, gatherings around a piece of prose. Why music in prose? It will alter the mood in the classroom. Classroom cohesiveness, all are bound. They are, sort of, in a group. There's cohesiveness, and classroom managements can be enhanced. When you do this in prose, if you haven't done it, try teachers, and I'm sure you will really benefit. There will be a lot of change in your teaching and the learning. Let students create found poems based on prose they have read. Provide students with a passage of prose and ask them to highlight 50-60 words that are the most interesting and meaningful to them. Found poems means like creating a poetry collage and thereby developing a new poetry altogether. Similarly, from prose, they can create found poems based on, say, 4 or 5 pieces of prose they have read, and they can, you can provide them some 50-60 words or 20 words or 30 words, which are the most, eye-catching in that particular piece. So it is a way by which you can make your prose also equally interesting, and the learning becomes easier. All of us know that music increases engagement. Distractive students create problems, but music can act as a glue. Yes, you must have noticed in your class, it's a very common feature. While your class is going on, some of the students start looking outside the window, they start nudging each other. This means your class is getting distracted because their interest level is dropping. So if there is, some kind of music into that prose, by music I don't mean purely singing or adding some instruments, musical instruments. By that I mean it's the teacher's bliss, how you can make your piece, your lesson of prose musical, rhythmical, and that will act as a binding force for all the students. Music into prose will trigger imagination. Yes, the out of the box, your mind, the compartments in your mind is attuned to a particular mindset. But when you infuse poetry into prose, it will suddenly trigger imagination, relaxation element of fun. Music is fun, and of course fun is fundamental to children's engagement levels. You can also skip lines in prose which are repetitive, which are sort of not adding much to the content. You can skip those lines, avoid them, and the children can create a poetry out of those lines which have been skipped while you are doing the lesson. A very small way by which you can create music in a prose passage. You can use the headings of 4S. Speaking. In prose you speak, in poetry you may sing. So use speaking / singing in prose. Situation, which means the theme. What is the theme of your prose piece? You can convert it into music, as we discussed in putting music into poetry. Then sentence formation, if the sentences are too big in a piece of prose, sometimes limiting to 3 lines, and by the time you reach the end of the 3rd line, the child forgets the first word of that particular line. So the connection is lost. So sentence formation, plays an important part in prose, which of course sometimes, disconnects the understanding. And the shifts, there are lots of shifts of moods and emotions even in prose. It's not only in music or in poetry that you find there is a shift of emotion. So the tenets basically can be altered as per the teaching, as per your understanding of the children, as per your classroom status, your level of the grade in which you are going. All these alterations can be made depending upon lots of factors, and the teachers are the best judge, to incorporate music into poetry and prose the way they want. I mean, there is no hard and fast, but these are certain ways by which we can really put music into poetry and prose, thereby bringing enthusiasm in the classroom. You all must have We all have begun from ABCD. And even today, I have seen in many small primary classes, nursery classes, LKG and all, how do the children learn ABCD? So if you technically think ABCD, it's like a prose piece. And how have the children learned it? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Or you can teach us A, B, C, D. I mean, it depends. So this was just a kiddish example that I quoted. So to make you understand that what and how should we bring music into poetry and prose, thereby resulting in a good class, creating a good class environment, and also bringing in that spirit in the classroom. Before I come to post work, I would also like to show you, these are some post-its. There are some, cards. There are some objects that can make your classroom enthusiastic. You can sometimes ring the bell to, make your children, suddenly you feel that the focus is going down. You can just, I mean, there are various, because of shortage of time, I haven't got many more things, but then the moment you try to understand that, yes, it is your bliss, it is your way of putting enthusiasm into the classroom, automatically lots of ways will erupt in your mind, and you will use them very beautifully to make your classroom interesting. I come to the post work for participants. On today's session, enumerate a few methods or activities you use to infuse enthusiasm in a classroom. It is like what you do. Have you tried on this, or you would try? What according to you? Just pen down 5 to 6 activities. Also share an example of how rhythm has shaped your prose. If you have ever tried this, if you have not, you can imagine a particular piece of prose in which where you are using rhythm. Create a 6-line para and an 8-line poem on butterfly. This is very interesting. I mean, the butterfly is the title. You will write a para on it, and you will also write, say, 2 stanzas of 4 lines each on the same, that is butterfly. And then you will yourself understand which one is more weightier, which one has more impact. How can you increase the impact either in poetry or prose that you have created? Give a passage to the students to read and then convert it into musical or add a musical element into it. Here you have a poem which is in the NCERT textbook, I think of class 6th. Convert a house, a home into rhythm, song, and a prose. So you have on the left-hand side, you can see on your screens, stanza 1. What is a house? It's brick and stone and wood that's hard. Some window glass and perhaps a yard. It's eaves and chimneys and tile and floors, and stucco and roof and lots of doors. What's a home? It's loving and family and doing for others. It's brothers and sisters and fathers and mothers. It's unselfish acts and kindly sharing and showing your loved ones you're always caring. There's a very clear-cut difference in the first stanza and the second stanza. I would not like to tell you the difference as understood by me. I would love to hear it from you in the next session. Find out 2 differences which are very evident, and also you have to convert it into rhythm and prose. The session which is on the 23rd, it is focusing on taking workshop lessons into the classroom. I would like you to do some pre-work for that. State the challenges faced by teachers in the qualitative improvement of students' learning. What's your idea of a classroom which incorporates learning as the prime focus of the teachers? And make a list of the major workshops with the titles you have attended. Maybe in the last 6 months or a year, or maybe 2 years, because in the course of last year, not many must you have attended. Whatever. I just want to know from the participants, how many have you attended, and are you really able to use those lessons that you have taken into your classrooms? Any questions, Mansi?
So far, we don't have any questions.
Okay.
There are a bunch of comments that say that are talking about changing the names to suit children in context, their context and relevance for them. Other than that, just letting the participants know if you have any questions, please let us know or raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can share.
Yeah, I can see some poetry created.
Yeah,
So would you be forwarding this to me, Mansi, or I mean,
I can copy it and send it to you.
some lovely creations I can see. Excellent. Some of the next one. Is this poem created by your children? The 5 elements of nature, they'll bring you a bright future. I think Ms. Bambani has.
Mamta Sadhu.
Okay.
Yeah, her children.
By the children. Excellent. I mean, you see the creativity of the children. It is just, igniting the spark and leaving the rest to them. So wonderful.
It's great to see. Thank you everyone for your wonderful participation. We are all looking forward to the next session. I will, as usual, be sending you the recording of this webinar along with the PPT. The pre-work and post-work is a part of the last few slides of the PPT. Please go through them before the next session. Oh, Balaji Rao has raised hand. Yes, you can unmute yourself and go.
It's Renu Rao. That's my husband's name. I've joined the Zoom link through my husband's link.
No
I
No
would
worries. Hi, Renu. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to ask Dr. Veena ma'am, while the children are writing poems, if they make spelling mistakes, is it okay?
Yes.
But they're
See,
able to read the words.
the children are making spelling mistakes.
Yeah,
So is it okay? That's your question?
yeah.
Yeah. See, which class would it be?
6th standard?
6th standard. Yes, I mean, we can excuse it because sometimes, when they are writing primarily on their mind, the focus is not on the spellings or the grammatical part. They are basically writing it spontaneously. So there can be errors, and I think we should ignore the spelling errors because the child, if you try to pinpoint on the spelling errors created, he might lose interest and get demotivated. So that's fine. Mrs. Rao, sometimes when we call for articles to be published in the school magazine from children of all classes, we really do not, edit them by putting everything in order.
Okay.
Yeah, we take their originals in their own handwriting. We don't print them. We put it in the exactly in the manner that they have penned. So that's fine. That's fine. That's how they learn. You can tell them separately outside the class, or sometimes, some other time during lunch time, or in the music class, or sometimes when their focus is not on, what they were doing in the English class, then they take they understand the mistakes better, and they're more receptive to, taking them.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's actually a great thought to say that an author's work should be original. I think that's another thing that, as a teacher, as a young teacher, inexperienced teacher, I hadn't thought about. Because I think the fact that an author is able to make it their own work better over years is really important. It's a part of their growth, and it's so wonderfully said by you. Uh, oh, we can see one more hand. Rixin, go ahead.
Yes, Rigzin?
Mm, all right. So I am teaching a bunch of students who have never written a poems in their life, or who have never sort of encountered poems, like they have been in a very remote schools, and they've never learned poetry as poetry. So I've been thinking a lot about should I focus on, the elements of poetry, rhythm and all of that, or should I just let them write in a free, like flow sort of a thing? So should I like sort of, go into those elements and make it more complicated for the beginners, or should I just let them write irrespective of rhythms and all of that? How should I go about it?
Yeah. Rigzin, this is what I would like to suggest is definitely let it be blank verse. If you have heard of Marlowe, Christopher Marlowe,
Mm-hmm.
he was the one who's called as the father of blank verse, and poetry originated from there, you know. So let not the children be first told about a particular format of writing a poetry. Let them write. Poetry does not, I mean, I would like to, all the participants, please get off from your, this is a very big misconception that poetry means something having rhyming words, something having, rhythmic pattern, something necessarily having, a musical intonation. No, no. So let your children who have never attempted the hand on poetry write whatever. The only thing you can tell them is that it should be divided, it should be compartmentalized. Either it could be a 4-line stanza, it could be a 6-line stanza, say 3-line stanza. I mean, just tell them the basic difference between prose and poetry. When you are asking your child to write poetry, just tell them that it should have very small sentences, very short lines, and let it have a sort of flow. Nothing else. Once they get into the stream, automatically they will focus on rhyming pattern, then they'll focus on the, last word rhyming with each other, or the first word rhyming. And then gradually you read out some poems which are properly formatted, so that they can, understand the difference, and they can improvise gradually. But let them do whatever for at least, 4, 5, 6, 7 times at the start.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And we will all see you on 23rd March, which is a Tuesday, for our session number 3 called Taking Workshop Lessons into Classrooms and Classroom as a Fish Tank. I can't wait and see how BAM sort of shows and models us what a classroom should look like. Thank you so much, ma'am. Any closing thoughts that you would like to share with the class?
Yeah, I was just reading this Mamta Sadhu. Sadhu poem, she has converted it from the chapter by Helen Keller. It is amazing. I mean, it is really so lovely to read how beautifully you have put it into a piece of poem. I mean, you can read it out to children. One day you read out the prose, and the same day you read out this what you have created. It will pick their mind. I mean, your children will be wonderstruck. They'll be appalled at the creation, because they feel that prose is prose. It can never be ever converted into musical rhythms or poetry, and vice versa. So we got to remove this from the minds of the children, and we got to open up their thought process that this can be done even from prose, which seems to be impossible to most of them. Excellent work, Mamta.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, I too have tried my hand. Once I got guidance from you, I too tried my hand and I've shared my poetry in the chat box. It's from the chapter from Helen Keller. I've tried converting prose into poetry.
Yeah, that's what. That's
So
what
this
I
is,
read.
so, yes, ma'am. It's Surabhi this side.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
So Surabhi, I think I addressed it to Mamta.
Okay, it's okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So wonderful, Surabhi. This is like, I mean, the way you have done it, and the tone doesn't get disturbed at all. You have very beautifully, penned it so that the flow is there. There is nowhere I can see while I'm reading that there is a break or discontinuity. So
Thank you
that's
so
great.
much, ma'am. It was a maiden attempt. Thank you so much for inspiring. Thank you.
Wonderful. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I had a great time today, and thank you so much for bringing your time and expertise to this workshop, Dr. Veena, again. And we cannot wait to see you again on Tuesday. Thanks, everyone. Have a great time.
Thank you so much, Mansi, and I really thank the Firki team, and lots of good wishes and blessings to you. See you on 23rd.
See you. Thank you.